The $70 million comeback. From dishwasher to director. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But for Isabella Bella Valdez, it wasn't about revenge. It was about survival. When Arthur Montez, her husband of 10 years, kicked her out of their luxurious Miami home with nothing but a worn suitcase and a decade-old car, he told her she was nothing. He told her she'd be begging at his door in less than a month. He was wrong. The next time Arthur saw his ex-wife, she wasn't begging. She was stepping off a $70 million Gulfstream G700, standing next to a man who could buy and sell his entire world on a whim. This is the story of how she went from divorced and destitute to an unstoppable force. Are you ready to witness a shocking transformation? Hit like on this video and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss a single moment. The death of a decade, the silence in the penthouse was deafening. It was a cold, sterile silence, the kind that only exists in spaces designed by minimalist architects and inhabited by emotionally fractured people. Isabella Valdez, soon to be just Isabella, stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the Miami fog roll in over Biscayne Bay. It felt symbolic. "So this is it," she said, her voice a rough whisper. She didn't turn around. Arthur Montez, her husband for a decade, sighed. It was a sound of pure exasperation, the one a person makes when a business deal is taking too long to close. He stood by the bar, adjusting the cuffs of his bespoke Brioni suit. "Isabella, don't be dramatic. It's just a signature." "Just a signature," she repeated the words, which tasted like ash. 10 years of my life, my career, everything, all for just one signature? "I provided you with a very comfortable life," Arthur snapped, his polished veneer cracking. "You lacked nothing. That art history degree from NYU was useless, and you know it. I gave you purpose. I gave you this." He gestured to the multi-million-dollar view, the custom Italian furniture, the life he had built while what had she done? She had planned his dinners, hosted his clients, chosen his ties. She had done all that, and more. She had been his confidant, his unpaid therapist, his social strategist, and his shield against the world. She had given up a promising curatorial position at a Brooklyn gallery to follow him to Miami for his big chance at a venture capital firm, an opportunity she now realized she herself had helped engineer. "And now you're giving it to Chloe," Isabella said. It wasn't a question. Arthur froze. He hadn't thought she knew the name. He'd been careless, leaving a hotel receipt from the Four Seasons in his travel bag. Chloe, 24, a plastic-curved influencer with an empty smile. "She has nothing to do with this," he lied poorly. "She has everything to do with this," Isabella said, finally turning around. Her eyes, usually a warm honey color, were like polished stones. "You're trading me in for a newer model, Arthur. It's the most cliché thing you've ever done. But the one thing you didn't count on is this. I'll sign your papers." She walked to the glass desk. The divorce settlement lay there, a thick, insulting pile of papers. His lawyers had been brutal. The prenuptial agreement, which she had signed in good faith, was ironclad. She would receive her car, a battered 2014 Honda Civic, her personal belongings, and a one-time transitional payment of $30,000. In their affluent neighborhood of Coral Gables that barely covered 3 months' rent. "You're making a mistake, Isabella," he said, and for a second she heard a flash of fear, not of losing her, but of the inconvenience. "You'll be back. You're not made for the real world. That's the difference between you and me, You think this," she gestured to the penthouse, "is the real world. I think it's a cage, a very beautiful, very empty cage." She picked up the expensive gold-plated pen. She didn't just sign her name. She scrawled it across the dotted line. Isabella Valdez. She dropped the pen on the desk, walked into the massive bedroom, and grabbed the one suitcase she had packed. It held 3 pairs of jeans, a few sweaters, her running shoes, and a faded copy of the Odyssey. As she walked toward the private elevator, Arthur blocked her path. "What about your art? Your books? Your clothes?" "Keep them," she said, her voice hollow. "Or give them to Chloe. I'm sure she'd love to play dress-up with my life." He flinched. "Isabella, wait, the $30,000. I'll have my bank wire it." "Don't bother," she said, cutting him off. "I don't want your guilt money." "Then you'll have nothing," he shouted, his face turning an ugly red. "I have my name," she said, pressing the elevator button. "And as of today, that's more than you have." The polished brass doors closed, reflecting Arthur's stunned and furious face. Isabella walked through the marble lobby, ignoring the polite nod of the concierge. She got into her scratched Honda, the engine starting with a reluctant cough. She didn't know where she was going. She just drove. She drove across the MacArthur Causeway, the fog so thick it was like driving through a cloud. She drove until the sun came up, and then drove some more. The check engine light, a small, angry orange eye, glowed on her dash. She drove north, away from the life she knew, with $500 in her checking account and a past that was burning her to the ground. The real world. Isabella drove for 2 days, fueled by stale gas station coffee and a hollow, burning rage. She ended up in rural North Carolina, not in the glamorous tourist spots, but in the rough, working-class town of Asheville. Her car finally gave up, the transmission dying with a metallic squeal right in front of a small, greasy spoon diner called the Corner Plate. It was a sign, a miserable, pathetic sign. She sold the car to a junkyard for $600. With just under $1,000 to her name, she found a room for rent above a bakery, a small, slanted attic space that perpetually smelled of yeast and stale sugar. It cost $700 a month cash. She was nearly broke. The real world, as Arthur called it, was cold and sharp. On her 3rd day, she walked into the Corner Plate. It was the antithesis of the high-end restaurants she used to frequent. The vinyl on the booths was cracked, and the air was thick with the smell of frying bacon and burnt coffee. A woman with a pencil-thin face and a Marta name tag looked her up and down. "We're not hiring for the front." "Excuse me?" Isabella asked, her voice still retaining a trace of her old, polished life. "Your hands," Marta said, pointing with her pen. "Soft, manicured. You've never worked a day in your life. I need a dishwasher. Can you handle that? Or did you come here for directions to the Biltmore estate?" Isabella looked at her own hands. Arthur had always complimented them, said they were an aristocrat's hands. She clenched them into fists. "I can wash dishes." Marta stared at her for a long, uncomfortable moment. "Fine, 80 an hour. You start now." "My name is Isabella." "It's Bella," Marta cut in. "We already have an Elena. Causes confusion. Aprons are in the back." For the next 4 weeks, Bella lived in a steaming hell. She scrubbed burned eggs off plates until her aristocrat's hands were raw, red, and cracked. Her back ached. Her feet throbbed. She learned to move fast to stay out of the cook's way and to ignore the condescending smiles of the career waitresses. She learned humility in a way she never had before. She was invisible. She was nobody. And in a strange way, it was liberating. Nobody here cared who her husband was, what she wore, or what useless degree she held. They only cared if she was fast enough. One night, after a brutal 12-hour double shift, she was sitting in the alley behind the diner, soaking her feet in a bucket of ice water. "Rough, huh?" Bella looked up. It was Sarah, one of the younger waitresses, smoking a cigarette. Sarah had sharp, intelligent eyes, and a hummingbird tattoo on her wrist. You could say that. Bella sighed, wincing as she moved her blistered heel. Sarah took a long drag and exhaled. Marta's a dragon, but she's fair. You're still here. Most of the pretty ones quit after one day. I'm not pretty, Bella said, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Not anymore, honey, Sarah said, squatting down. That's just grime. It washes off. You're different. You talk like one of those people from the tasting rooms on the hill. What's your story? Bella was about to give the canned, fresh start speech, but something in Sarah's no-nonsense gaze made her stop. My husband left me. Took everything. Sarah nodded, not with pity, but recognition. Welcome to the club. My ex took my car and my credit. At least you only wash dishes. I wash and serve. Tips are terrible this time of year. She stamped out her cigarette. Listen, I'm pulling extra work tonight. A catering gig at one of the big estates. It's $35 an hour, cash. They need extra servers. You look like you can hold a tray. You in? Bella's entire being screamed no. The thought of putting on a uniform, of serving people like Arthur and his friends, was nauseating. I don't know. It's $30 an hour, Bella, Sarah said, her voice firm. That's almost 2 hours of Marta. You're renting that attic room from Paolo, right? He's a sweet old man, but he'll kick you to the curb if you're a day late. You need the money. She was right. Bella needed the money. Okay, Bella said, her voice stronger. I'm in. Good. Be at the corner of Main and Charter at 5 p.m. Dress black. And for God's sake, file those broken nails. You look like you've been clawing your way out of a grave. It feels like it, Bella muttered as Sarah walked away. You'll be fine, Sarah called over her shoulder. Just smile. Don't talk. And whatever you do, don't spill anything on the guests, especially not at the Barron estate. Bella's blood ran cold. The Barron estate. She knew that name. Anyone with an art history degree knew that name. Julian Barron, the reclusive, eccentric billionaire art collector. He was a myth, a ghost who owned more private art than some small countries. She was going from scrubbing eggs at the corner plate to serving champagne at one of the world's most significant private art collections, the Critical Eye. The Barron estate wasn't just a house, it was a compound. Perched high on a hill, it was invisible from the main road, concealed by a dense forest of century-old oaks and imported Italian cypresses. The catering van passed through 3 separate security checkpoints before snaking up a long gravel drive. Bella, dressed in stiff, ill-fitting black shirt and trousers, felt her old life creeping back into her. This was the world she used to inhabit, albeit as a guest, not as the help. All right, newbies, barked the catering manager, a stressed man named Damien, as the van pulled up. Listen up. Do not look at the guests. Do not speak to the guests. Definitely do not speak to Mr. Barron. He doesn't like people. Your job is to be invisible. A hand that appears with a drink. A hand that takes an empty glass. Understood? Your wallpaper. Yes, chef, the group mumbled. They were ushered through a massive industrial-sized kitchen and given their assignments. Bella and Sarah were tasked with passing champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Just follow me, Sarah whispered, grabbing a silver tray. And try not to look terrified. They can smell fear. Bella stepped out into the main gallery, and her breath caught. It wasn't a room. It was a museum. The walls were lined with art that shouldn't be here. Art she had only seen in textbooks. A small, moody Turner. An austere, emotive Rothko. And there, above the massive limestone fireplace, was a painting that stopped her heart. My God, she whispered. What? Sarah hissed, nudging her. Get the tray up. That's a... Bella couldn't tear her eyes away. That's the girl with the amber cameo. It's a Vermeer. It's been missing since 1940. Stolen from a private collection in Poland. Sarah's eyes widened. Bella, shut up. We'll get fired. It's just a painting. Pass the little quiches. Bella forced herself to move, but her mind was racing. The Vermeer was real. She could tell 20 feet away. The way the light hit the subject's face, the characteristic use of ultramarine blue. It was legitimate. Julian Barron didn't just collect art. He owned history. For 2 hours, Bella was the perfect wallpaper. She glided through the minimalist rooms, offering champagne with a polite, empty smile. The guests were the same people she had known in Miami, just with more money. Tech barons, old money heirs, and venture capitalists. They all had the same predatory glint in their eyes. She only saw Julian Barron once. He wasn't what she expected. He wasn't a sleek, young CEO. He was an older man, perhaps in his late 60s, with a shock of white hair and the most intelligent, piercing blue eyes she had ever seen. He was dressed simply in a dark cashmere sweater and trousers, and he looked thoroughly bored with his own party. He was standing alone, staring at the Vermeer, when a group of men in sharp suits cornered him. Bella edged closer, tray aloft, pretending to offer drinks to a nearby couple. "And that's why the Dave LeMink is a guaranteed investment, Julian," one of the men was saying, a slick art dealer named Antoine. "It's a pivotal piece from his Fauvist period, and at $50 million, it's a steal. The provenance is impeccable." "Impeccable," Julian Barron repeated, his voice a low drawl. "You said the same thing about the Picasso you tried to sell me last year, Antoine. The one my own experts later discovered was a brilliant 70s forgery." "A misunderstanding, Julian, I assure you," Antoine said, sweating slightly. "This piece, this is different. It's authenticated by the highest authorities." The men moved toward a smaller, adjacent room that Bella hadn't noticed. It was a private viewing gallery. There, on an easel under a single spotlight, was a painting. It was a vibrant, chaotic landscape, all screeching reds and swirling blues. A Vlaminck. Bella's eyes narrowed. She had seen this piece before, or rather, a photo of it. It had been in her master's thesis catalog. Great Fakes, the art of the master forger. "Gentlemen," Antoine said, gesturing grandly, "I present Le Pont de Château." The men murmured appreciation. Julian Barron just looked on, his expression unreadable. Bella watched, her heart hammering. She was just wallpaper. She should leave. But as she looked at the painting, her art historian's brain took over. It was good. It was very good. But it was wrong. The signature was too clean. The visible canvas on the edge had a synthetic tension that wasn't right for the period, and the use of cerulean blue in the sky. Vlaminck was famously known to hate that pigment. He called it a paint for bankers' wives. Antoine was pulling out a contract. "If you just sign, Julian, we can have it transported to your vault in Geneva by morning." Julian Barron reached out a hand to take the pen. "No." The word was out of her mouth before she could stop it. It was soft, but it cut through the room like a knife. Everyone froze. Antoine spun around, his face a mask of fury. "Who in the hell are you?" Damien, the catering manager, was already rushing over, his face pale. "I am so sorry, Mr. Barron. I am so sorry. She's new. She's delusional." "I asked a question," Julian Barron said, his voice quiet, but carrying an authority that stopped Damien cold. He turned his piercing blue eyes on Bella. She was still holding her silver tray. "You said no," he said. "Why?" Bella's hands were shaking so hard, the champagne flutes were rattling. This was it. This was the end of her $35 an hour job. This was probably the end of her life in Asheville. She set the tray down on a nearby table. She took a deep breath and walked toward the painting. "Because it's a fake," Bella said. The execution, the silence that followed Bella's statement was absolute. Antoine, the art dealer, was the first to break it with a sharp, brittle laugh. "A fake? A fake?" he scoffed, looking at her in her black and white uniform. "And what exactly are your qualifications, darling? Did you take a Modern Art 101 class at the local community college?" Damien, the catering manager, looked like he was about to have a heart attack. "Mr. Barron, please, I'll have her removed immediately. She's delusional." "Wait." Julian Barron's voice was calm, but held an authority that silenced everyone. He hadn't taken his eyes off Bella. "She made an accusation. I want to hear the evidence." "You," he said, pointing at her with a long, elegant finger. "Explain." Bella's heart was a drum against her ribs, but the moment she focused on the canvas, the fear melted away. This was her world. This was the one thing Arthur had never been able to touch, the one part of her that still belonged to her. "Let's start with this pigment," she said, her voice clear and steady. She walked closer to the painting, her old curatorial instincts taking over. "This painting is dated 1905. Vlaminck, at this point in his Fauvist period, used a very specific raw palette, straight from the tube. He famously detested pre-mixed artificial colors. The sky here," she pointed, "is saturated with cerulean blue. Vlaminck abhorred cerulean. He wrote about it in a letter to Derain in 1906, calling it a weakened bourgeois color." Julian Barron's eyebrows rose. Antoine's face had gone from red to a sickly pale. "Furthermore," Bella continued, her confidence mounting, "look at the brushwork on the bridge," she pointed. "It is hesitant. Vlaminck was never hesitant. He was an anarchist. He attacked the canvas. This is the work of someone copying his style, not inhabiting it. They are trying to replicate the wild strokes, but they are doing it carefully. It's a contradiction." She wasn't finished. "But the real clue is the canvas. Look at the weave." She pointed to the edge where the canvas was tacked. "It is too perfect. It's a modern synthetic linen blend. In 1905, he would have been using a rougher jute or hemp canvas, hand-stretched, and it would have visible imperfections. This was likely factory-made within the last 20 years. She turned from the painting and faced Julian Barron. "This is not Le Pont de Château. It's a very, very good attempt. But it is a forgery. A brilliant one, but a fake nonetheless. You should have your own experts check the carbon dating of the paint pigments. I guarantee you'll find titanium white, which wasn't commercially available in this form until the 1920s. The room was utterly still. Antoine stared at Bella as if she had grown a second head. Julian Barron looked at the painting, then at Bella, then back at the painting. A slow, thin smile spread across his face. It was a genuinely amused, wolfish smile. "Antoine," he said, his voice dangerously soft. "You have 30 seconds to exit my property, and if my lawyers ever hear your name again, it will be in a courtroom." Julian, listen to me," Antoine stammered. "You're going to believe her? A waitress over me?" "The waitress," Mr. Barron said, "just saved me $50 million, and did so without a financial interest in the outcome. You, on the other hand," he gestured to two large, stone-faced security guards who had appeared at the door. "Gentlemen, please escort Mr. Antoine to his car, and ensure he doesn't take any of the little quiches." Antoine was dragged off, protesting all the way. The remaining guests in the room began to talk in low, excited whispers. The party was over. Bella stood there, suddenly aware of her uniform, her cracked hands, the fact that she had just torpedoed a $50 million deal. She began to back away, her work for the evening clearly done. "And where do you think you're going?" Barron's voice stopped her. She turned. I'm sorry, Mr. Barron. I should return to the kitchen." "I don't think so," he said. He walked over to her. He was tall and smelled faintly of old books and expensive cologne. I have had experts from the Getty, the Met, and the Louvre on my payroll. None of them have been so concise, so passionate, or so correct in such a short amount of time. He looked at her, truly saw her for the first time. He saw the intelligence behind the exhaustion in her eyes. "You," he said, "are wasted here. Who are you?" "My name is Isabella Valdez. I used to be a wife, a socialite, a joke. I used to be an art historian." "No," Julian Barron said, a strange light in his eyes. "You are an art historian. You are simply currently between assignments." He pulled a simple, elegant business card from his pocket. "My personal assistant, Ms. Davies, will call the catering company and inform them you are indisposed. You and I, Ms. Valdez, have much to discuss, starting with that Vermeer." Bella looked at Sarah, who was peeking out from behind a potted palm, giving her a frantic thumbs up. "Deal," Bella said. "Good," Barron said, gesturing for her to follow him up a winding glass staircase. "First, we'll get you a real drink, and then you're going to tell me everything you know about the art of forgery." As she followed him, she passed a huge gilded mirror. She caught her reflection. It was Bella the dishwasher, in a baggy black uniform. But for the first time in almost a year, the woman staring back at her looked like Isabella Valdez. The new acquisition, Bella did not return to the attic room above the bakery. She did not return to the corner plate. She spent the next 6 hours in Julian Barron's private library, a 2-story rotunda filled with first-edition books and, she suspected, more missing art. They drank a Chateau Margaux 1982. They talked about art, about history, about the soulless, transactional nature of the modern art market. He was fascinated by her knowledge, not just of the art, but of the history behind it, the provenance, the wars, the passions that drove artists to create. She told him her story. Not the long, self-pitying version, but the facts. The NYU degree, the curatorial job she gave up, the divorce, the Coral Gables penthouse, the $30,000 she refused. Julian Barron listened, his fingers interlaced into a V in front of his face. He was a man who understood value, and he recognized, with a collector's thrill, that he had just stumbled across something priceless. "Arthur Montez," he mused, swirling the wine in his glass. "I know the name. A minor league venture capitalist. He thinks he's a shark, but he's swimming in a fishbowl. He's a fool. He didn't just trade you in. He traded a masterpiece for a print. A very, very cheap print." "He thought I was useless," Bella said, the wine warming her. "He said my degree was wall decoration." "Then he is an idiot," Barron said simply. "People like Antoine, they are parasites. They thrive on the ignorance of new money. They turn beauty into a commodity. They are, in short, my least favorite people in the world." He leaned forward, his blue eyes intense. "I've been wanting to start a new project, Ms. Valdez. A non-profit, a foundation. One that doesn't just buy art, but protects it. A foundation dedicated to authenticating major works, hunting down fakes, and using all my resources to repatriate art stolen by the Nazis and other regimes." He paused. "I have the money. I have the power. But I don't have the time, and I don't have the eye. I need someone to run it. Someone with unimpeachable knowledge, a passion for truth, and a certain amount of righteous anger." He smiled. "I need a director, a chairwoman. I need you." Bella stared at him. "Mr. Barron, I'm a dishwasher." "You were a dishwasher," he corrected. "As of 2 hours ago, I'm offering you a new position. Chairwoman of the Barron Valdez Foundation. We'll call it the Valdez Foundation. Sounds better. Your salary will be, say, 5 times what your husband made. You will have an unlimited budget for research, travel, and acquisitions. You will have my lawyers, my security, and my total backing. Your only job is to be right and to be ruthless." Bella was speechless. It was insane. It was a dream. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Julian said, topping up her glass. "Your first assignment will be to go through my entire collection and tell me what is fake. I suspect after Antoine, I have a few more. Errors in judgment." Bella looked at the fire, the Vermeer on the wall, the new life opening up before her. The fear was gone. The humiliation was gone. All that was left was a sharp, clear purpose. "Yes," she said. "Mr. Baron, yes, I accept." "Excellent. You start tomorrow. My assistant will take care of everything. Clothing, a car, a place to live. I have a guest house on the property you can use." "Thank you," Bella said, the words feeling small. "But if I'm going to run this foundation, I can't be kept. I will find my own place, and I will need to return to my room, to pick up my things." Julian Baron nodded, his respect for her visibly growing. "Of course my driver will take you. But Bella, yes, don't dally too long. We have a late..." Bella left the estate at 4 a.m., not in a catering van, but in the back of a black Rolls-Royce Ghost. She picked up her small bag from the attic room, leaving a month's rent and a thank you note for Paolo. She left a separate note for Sarah with $500 cash and the simple message, "You were right. It was good money. Thank you. IV." The grand return for the next 6 months, Isabella Valdez vanished. She was neither Bella the dishwasher nor Bella the ex-wife. She was I, Valdez, director. She immersed herself in the work with a fierce, singular focus. She flew to Zurich, London, Florence. She dismantled Julian's collection, finding 2 more high-level fakes and a stolen antiquity that she immediately arranged to be returned to the Greek government, causing a minor international incident that Julian found hilarious. She wasn't just his employee. She became his partner, his protégé. He taught her about business, about influence, about how to use power with a surgeon's precision. She taught him about history, about beauty, about the soul of the things he owned. She changed. Her hands were still strong, but the grime was replaced by purpose. She cut her hair into a sharp, elegant bob. She traded her jeans for the sleek, crisp lines of designers like the Rowe and Loro Piana. She didn't look like Arthur's wife. She looked like her own woman. One afternoon, she was in Julian's office, reviewing blueprints for a new museum wing. "The Miami Art Gala is in 2 weeks, Julian said casually, without looking up from a document. "It's the biggest charity event of the year. All the sharks will be there." "I know," Bella said. "We're donating the authenticated Vlamink we just acquired for their auction." "Good. I want you to present it." "On stage, me? You're the director of the Valdez Foundation," he said. "It's your job. Plus," he added, a twinkle in his eye, "I hear it's being held at the Fontainebleau Hotel, and your ex-husband's firm, Montez Capital, is a junior sponsor. I suspect he'll be there." Bella's fingers tightened around her pen. The Fontainebleau. The place where Arthur had proposed. The place where she had held her first major client dinner. "I see," she said, her voice perfectly neutral. "We fly that afternoon," Julian said. "The G700 is at your disposal. I'll be your date." He finally looked up. "It's time, Bella. It's time for Miami to officially meet Ms. Valdez." Audience connection. Do you think Bella is ready for this reunion? How do you think Arthur will react to seeing her? Leave your predictions in the comments. The Gulfstream G700 sliced through the clouds over Biscayne Bay, a silver needle stitching the sky. Bella sat in one of the plush, cream leather seats, sipping a glass of water. She wasn't nervous. She was prepared. In 6 months, her entire world had shifted. She was no longer a victim. She was a general. The jet's cabin, silent as a library and smelling of fresh flowers and rich leather, was a very different world from the rattling Honda Civic she had driven out of this city. "Ready?" Julian Barron asked from the opposite seat. He was reading the Wall Street Journal, looking perfectly at ease. "I've dealt with dishonest art dealers and repatriated a 12th century statue," Bella said with a small smile. "I think I can handle a party." "That's the spirit," he said, folding the paper. "Just remember, these people are smoke and mirrors. You are the only one in that room who is true, unequivocally real." They landed at Miami Opa-locka Executive Airport, away from the commercial chaos. A black armored Rolls-Royce Cullinan awaited them on the tarmac. When Bella stepped out of the jet, the fresh, misty air of her old city hit her. It didn't feel like home. It felt like a battlefield. They were driven to the Fontainebleau Hotel, not as guests, but as patrons. They were given the presidential suite, which was really just a staging area for Bella to get ready. A team of stylists hired by Julian was waiting. "Ms. Valdez, it's a pleasure," said a woman with a sleek French accent. "I have options." The options were a rack of haute couture dresses. Bella passed over the safe black and the flashy red. Her eyes landed on a deep sapphire blue gown. It was an Oscar de la Renta, a stunning, off-the-shoulder silk column that was both elegant and armor-like. "That one," she said. When she was ready, she looked in the full-length mirror. The woman staring back was a stranger. Her hair was pulled back into a sleek chignon. Around her neck, borrowed from Julian's private collection, was an antique diamond necklace that once belonged to Russian royalty. She was stunning, but more than that, she looked powerful. "Well," Julian said, standing in the doorway in a flawless tuxedo, "Vermeer would have wanted to paint you. How do I look?" she asked. "You look," he said, offering her his arm, "like you own the place." "Good," Bella said, taking his arm. "Because tonight, I just might." The reckoning. The Fontainebleau Grand Ballroom wasn't simply a room. It was an arena. This was the pulsing heart of Miami's old and new money, a glittering shark tank where fortunes were made, alliances were broken, and reputations were forged or annihilated over canapes and cocktails. The air was a heavy perfume of legacy, desperation, and $1,000 champagne. And tonight, Arthur Montez felt he was its master. He was near the double-arched entrance, a strategic position, holding a champagne flute like a scepter. His custom Tom Ford tuxedo felt like a second skin. On his arm, his new fiancée, Chloe, was a jarring touch of loud red in a sea of tasteful black and gold. Her dress was a Hervé Léger, so tight it looked vacuum-sealed, and she was already complaining about her feet. "Arthur, that's Javier Gallardo," Chloe hissed in his ear, her voice a sharp-edged whisper. "He runs the biggest tech fund in the valley. Introduce me." "In a minute, darling," Arthur said, his smile wide and practiced. He had just landed a laugh from a city councilman. "Networking is a hunt, not a race. You have to let them come to you." He felt a rush of pure, uncut confidence. This was his city, his crowd. He had shed his past, the quiet, academic, boring wife, and ascended. Chloe was young, ambitious, and understood that life was a transaction. He was a king in his castle, and tonight, the gala was his coronation as one of the city's new elite. He was in the middle of telling a joke to a rival venture capitalist when the energy in the ballroom shifted. It wasn't a sound. It was a change in pressure, a collective intake of breath. The sharp chatter near the grand staircase didn't just quiet. It evaporated. "What is it?" Chloe asked, craning her neck. The live quartet, which had been playing a cheerful Vivaldi, faltered and went silent. The only sound was the click of heels on marble. The announcer at the door, a man with a voice trained to sound bored by billionaires, suddenly didn't sound bored at all. His voice boomed over the microphone, filled with a reverence that was so rare it was shocking. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer called out, his voice cracking slightly with excitement. "Please welcome Mr. Julian Barron." A wave of whispers and gasps rolled through the room. Julian Barron. Here. Barron didn't attend events. He was the event. People physically swiveled, a sea of faces drawn to the top of the staircase. Arthur felt a chill. Barron. If he could just get 30 seconds. And his guest, the announcer added, his voice rising to a crescendo, as if he couldn't believe the name on his card. "Ms. Isabella Valdez!" The name hit Arthur Montez like a physical blow. It was as if the air had been sucked from his lungs. Valdez. Isabella Valdez. He spun around, a fixed, idiotic smile still on his face. And then the smile dissolved. The champagne flute, the one he was holding like a scepter, slipped from his numb fingers. It didn't just fall. It shattered on the marble floor, the sound a small, sharp explosion in the sudden resonant silence. He heard the name. Isabella Valdez. It couldn't be. But it was. She stood at the top of the staircase, her hand resting lightly on Julian Barron's arm. It was Isabella. But it wasn't his Isabella. The woman he had discarded, the woman he had called wall decoration, was gone. In her place stood a queen. She wore a deep sapphire silk gown that seemed to drink the light. It dropped off one shoulder, a perfect column of impossible elegance. Around her throat was not a simple pearl necklace, but a cascade of antique diamonds, a collar he instinctively recognized as royalty. It was the kind of jewelry that started wars. Her hair, which she used to wear in a simple practical bun, was swept up into a chignon so perfect it might have been sculpted by a Greek master. But it wasn't the dress, or the diamonds, or the billionaire on her arm that held the room captive. It was her bearing. She didn't look nervous. She didn't look impressed. She looked inevitable. She descended the staircase with slow, deliberate grace, her eyes scanning the room not as a guest, but as an inspector, as if she were deciding which parts of it were worthy of her time. "Arthur, who is that?" Chloe's voice was a harsh, ugly thing, breaking the spell. "Wait, Valdez, as in your ex-wife? The dishwasher?" Arthur couldn't speak. His throat was filled with ash. He was frozen, a fragment of glass from his own broken glass resting on the tip of his $2,000 shoe. He wasn't seeing Isabella, his academic, bookish wife. He was seeing Ms. Valdez, a creature of terrifying power. He was seeing the woman he had thrown out with $30,000, and she was now wearing $25 million around her neck, like an afterthought. He had traded an invaluable, undiscovered masterpiece for a cheap, garish print, and the print was currently digging her acrylic nails into his arm. "My God," Chloe whispered, her face pale with a mix of envy and panic. She's with Julian Barron. He's worth more than God. Why is she with him, Arthur? Why didn't you tell me she looked like that?" Isabella and Julian reached the foot of the stairs. The most powerful people in the room, the tech barons, the old money heirs, the politicians, parted like the Red Sea. They surged toward Isabella, not Julian. She was the new sun, and they were all desperate planets seeking her orbit. Isabella smiled, a polite, measured smile, as the mayor of Miami bent to kiss her hand. She was a vision of grace, laughing lightly at something Julian whispered in her ear, and then she saw him. Her eyes, those warm, honey eyes he used to get lost in, swept the room. They passed over the fawning crowd, over the bar, and then they landed on him. Audience interaction point. The moment everyone waited for. If you were Isabella, what would you do next? A shouting revenge or an elegant dismissal? Comment now. For a second, their eyes met. Arthur felt a flash of desperate, insane hope. She sees me. She remembers, and then Isabella did the most brutal, devastating thing she possibly could have done. She gave him a tiny, polite nod. The kind of nod you give a valet who has retrieved your car. A nod of faint recognition, and even fainter interest. Then, her eyes dismissed him, gliding past him as if he were nothing more than a statue, and focused on the CEO of a major bank. That 1-second dismissal was a public execution. He was nothing. He was less than nothing. He was a ghost. She looked right at us, Chloe hissed, her voice shaking with rage. She looked at us like we were nothing, like we were the help. Arthur, do something. Don't just stand there looking like a fool. Go talk to her. People are starting to look at us, driven, humiliated, and operating on pure blind panic. Arthur did the single stupidest thing he could have done. He approached. He pushed his way through the crowd, dragging a furious Chloe behind him. He reached the small, powerful circle of light surrounding Isabella. Isabella, he said. His voice came out as a pathetic croak. He cleared his throat. Isabella. She turned. The small inner circle, Julian Barron, the mayor, the bank CEO, turned with her. Half a dozen of the most powerful eyes in Florida were now on him. Isabella's face was a mask of perfect, polite coolness. Arthur, I'm surprised to see you here. I always found you preferred events with a lower barrier to entry. It was a scalpel disguised as a comment, a direct hit to his junior sponsor status. He flushed. I barely recognized you. You look amazing. Thank you, she said, her voice as cool and smooth as the silk of her dress. You look the same. The insult hung in the air, shimmering as brightly as her diamonds. This is, Arthur stammered, shoving Chloe forward. This is my fiancée, Chloe. Chloe, this is Isabella. Chloe, trying to regain some footing, forced a saccharine smile. So lovely to finally meet you. Arthur hasn't told me anything about you. I'm sure he hasn't, Isabella said, her eyes giving Chloe a quick valuation glance that took in the too-tight dress and the desperate eyes. He was never one to appreciate history. He prefers new acquisitions. But one must always be so careful about provenance. Before Arthur or Chloe could even process the multi-layered insult, Isabella turned and placed a hand on Julian's arm. And this, of course, is Julian Barron. Julian, this is Arthur Montez. He used to manage my affairs. The ultimate demotion. From husband to manager, Julian Barron, who had been observing the interaction with the detached amusement of a lion watching mice play, didn't even look at Arthur. His gaze did not honor him. He smiled at Isabella. Isabella, darling, Julian said, his voice a rich baritone that cut through the chatter. Mr. Elias and Senator Torres are waiting in the Winter Garden. They are eager to discuss the repatriation of the Syrian artifacts. We really shouldn't keep them waiting. You're right, of course, Julian, Isabella said. She turned back to Arthur, her smile now just a polite memory. If you'll excuse us, Arthur. Chloe. She used Chloe's name, proving she had registered, considered, and dismissed her in the same breath. It was enlightening. Good seeing you again. Enjoy your evening. And with that, she and Julian Barron turned and glided away. They didn't hurry. They didn't look back. And the entire center of gravity of the room, the mayor, the CEO, the power, the money, moved with them, leaving Arthur and Chloe standing in a cold, empty vacuum. It was as if a light had been extinguished. People were no longer looking at them. They were looking past them. She called me an acquisition, Chloe hissed, her face blotchy red. And you just stood there. You let her. Chloe, shut up, Arthur muttered, his face pale. No, you told me she was nothing. You told me she was a sad bookworm who… She pointed with a shaking red-nailed finger. She's not nothing, Arthur. You're a fool. She yanked her arm from his. I'm going to the powder room. But she didn't walk toward the restrooms. She walked toward the bar where the hedge fund manager, Javier Gallardo, was standing. Later that night, the gala host took the stage. And now, to say a few words and present the centerpiece of our auction, please welcome the director of the newly formed and incredibly important Valdez Foundation, Ms. Isabella Valdez. Arthur, who had been trying to get another drink from a waiter who was pointedly ignoring him, froze. Director. The Valdez Foundation. Bella walked onto the stage. The spotlight hit her, and the room fell into a hushed reverence. She was not a guest. She was not a… She was the main event. Good evening, she said. Her voice was clear, strong, and confident. It filled the entire vast ballroom. My name is Isabella Valdez. For too long, she continued, the art world has been a playground, not for patrons, but for predators. People who value profit over truth, who see a signature, but not the soul of the work. Dealers who trade masterpieces as if they are mere commodities to be bought, hidden, or discarded when a newer, shinier model comes along. From the back of the room, Arthur felt every word as a physical blow. This wasn't a speech. It was his eulogy. The Valdez Foundation is not a charity, Bella declared, her voice resonating with passion. It is a correction. We are not here to buy. We are here to validate, to repatriate, to restore. We are here to find the truth, to protect it, and to return it to the world. We are here to remind everyone that true value is not in what you possess, but in what you protect, and that some things are not for sale. The room exploded. It wasn't polite applause. It was a thunderous, sustained, standing ovation. Arthur stood alone in the shadows, a ghost at his own funeral. He saw the woman he had called nothing command a room he had spent his whole life trying to enter. He saw Chloe across the room laughing and sliding her phone number to Javier Gallardo. He was ruined. He hadn't just made a mistake. He hadn't just lost a wife. He had committed an act of self-annihilation. He had thrown away a masterpiece and kept the fakes. And the woman he had run out of town in a 10-year-old Honda had just returned and taken the whole city from him. Isabella Valdez never looked back. Her return wasn't about revenge. It was a byproduct of her own incredible ascent. She didn't return to show Arthur what he had lost. She returned to show the world what she had found. Herself. Arthur, it turned out, was audited 6 months later. His new fiancée had been a corporate spy for a rival firm. He lost his job, his reputation, and his penthouse. Isabella's story teaches us that our worth is never, ever determined by who we leave or who leaves us. It is determined by what we build in the rubble. She drove away from her old life in a broken car, but she returned having built an entirely new one, all on her own terms. Call to action and conclusion. What did you think of Isabella's incredible transformation? Have you ever had a moment where you had to completely rebuild your life from scratch? Leave your story in the comments below. If you loved this story of justice and empowerment, please don't forget to like this video and share it with someone who needs to be reminded of their own power. And for more dramatic stories every week, be sure to hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell. You won't want to miss what comes next.